Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to this event. My name is Haruko Wainwright. I'm a research scientist in environmental and earth and environmental sciences area at Berkley Lab. I'll be the host tonight. To set the stage, I show some slides. This is the picture of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in March 2011. I assume that you have seen this picture and you know what happened there. Let me ask you two questions. Those of you who were really scared or concerned during the accident, please raise your hands. Most of the people? I was really scared too. Many scientists claim that people get scared or panic because they're ignorant or stupid. I don't think so. This was really serious. I have a PhD in nuclear engineering. I was more scared than other people. The second question, those of you who are still kind of scared to go to Fukushima, let's say if you win a free trip to Fukushima, you don't want to go, please raise your hands. Couple people. So this is something that we want to change during this event. It's been 6.5 years, and things have changed a lot. Many people have not paid attention. I totally understand it. There are so many disasters every year. I really appreciate you coming to this event to learn about the current situation and the future of Fukushima. Here I show the changes of radiation air dose rate in the 80-kilometer radius around the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. So the first one is 1 month after the accident, 7, 15, 20, 30, 42, 54, and 67. So the last one is 5.5 years after the accident. You can see that the radiation air dose rate has decreased significantly. The datasets show that the radiation level has decreased by 75% in 4 years in the town area, and it's much larger reduction in the decontaminated area as well. But many people don't know this information, and we always have fake news. So when you see a sensational news article about Fukushima, I would recommend to check SNOPS, which is the fake news detection website. For example, this map or this figure, they claim that this is a radioactive plume across Pacific. But in fact, this is a tsunami propagation, the height of tsunami after the earthquake, and this is completely false. Here in US, we know that fake news is really devastating for politics last year and for this country. As you imagine, fake news is really devastating for fishery and economy in Fukushima. The perception is very hard to measure, but it is a real problem, and it could be the biggest problem. I have an example from a town called Minamata in Japan. There was a big mercury contamination in 50s and 60s. So there was a chemical plant discharged so much mercury in this small bay. Hundreds of people died due to acute mercury poisoning or severe birth defects like that. Right now, there are still thousands or more than 10,000 people suffering from pain or neurological disorders. But when you talk with them, the victims, you'd be surprised to hear that they spend most of their time, or even 90% of time, talking about discrimination, even though they have severe health effect. They have been discriminated because of this disease, and also they have been discriminated just the fact that they are from this town. After 60 years, still people are concerned about discrimination. So when they go to Tokyo, for example, for travel, they don't say they're from Minamata. They try to hide. So the negative perception really hurts people, and it can last very long time. We don't want to happen in Fukushima. What can we do? We can start from very simple geography. When people think about Fukushima in United States, people think about nuclear accident. But Fukushima is actually the name of prefecture. This big prefecture, green color, the size is about the same as the state of Connecticut. And there is a Fukushima City far from the nuclear power plant. This tiny red area, this is the current evacuation designated zone, which is less than 3% of this prefecture. But because of this perception about Fukushima, all the people, more than 1 million people in this prefecture, suffer from negative perception. For example, I took my daughter to Fukushima City this spring. Many people, many of my friends, and my husband, who is a UC professor, all of them are concerned about the fact that I'm taking small child to Fukushima City. But Fukushima City, as you see, is a beautiful place, and there are a lot of tourists too. It is totally safe to live there and also visit there as well. When we think about the perception, the name really matters. This is the Google Earth of Hanford Site. Hanford Site used to be the biggest nuclear weapon production site in the United States and the biggest nuclear contaminated site. And this river is Columbia River going to Portland and also Pacific. And there are vineyards around. The Columbia River and vineyards are totally safe, and they are very fortunate that they have different names. They are not named after Hanford. Speaking of the Hanford site, people in US worry about Fukushima, but forget the fact that they have so much nuclear contamination within the United States. There used to be more than 100 sites that were used for nuclear weapon production and contaminated by radionuclides, heavy metals, or organic solvents. I work with Japanese researchers, and I'm giving advices on groundwater contamination in Fukushima nuclear power plant. I'm providing the perspective that groundwater contamination in Fukushima nuclear power plant is nothing compared to what these sites used to have in 30 years ago. But I view this map as a story of progress, story of success. There used to be more than 100 sites. Now we only have 16 sites. We have been successful to remediating these sites and close these sites. During this remediation process, what we learned is that environmental monitoring is really important and critical. Measuring contaminant level or measurements sound really basic, and it is a fundamental thing in science. But measurements provide the fact that we can rely on. And residents really believe in those data sets and data values. In particular, we are living in the very exciting age of environmental monitoring. We have different technologies like looking at subsurface or sensors on airplane or satellite, and also sensors on drones. In Berkley Lab, Earth and Environmental Sciences area work on different research topics, from soil microbes to climate and water and energy resources. And we have pioneered many different monitoring technologies, and we are still pushing the boundary of sensing technologies. In Fukushima, we have been contributing to the research activities. For example, we have been working on radionuclide transport prediction, data integration and mapping of radiation datasets. We are working on combining model simulations and datasets, and 3D real-time gamma ray imaging has enabled to identify hotspots of radioactivity in houses and out in the neighborhood. In particular, we have been providing the methodology to integrate different kinds of radiation data sets and advanced way of mapping by integrating different data sets for different sensors, like on the ground measurements and airplane measurements, and provide integrated radiation dose rate map of the evacuation zone. And for example, we can see the reduction of radiation air dose rate, and we can really see the effect of decontamination where the reduction is large. Today's speaker, Professor Hayano, and high school students brought this environmental monitoring to the next level. 200 high school students were wearing D Shuttle new sensor so that they can measure the radiation exactly. And this is the Forbes article, and they found that external dose in Fukushima is not high, it's no different from the other part of the world. Such citizen science has a real impact. Professor Hayano's follow-up study was featured by Science magazine. This study found that Fukushima residents have exposed to far less radiation than people originally thought. This is a tremendous relief for the local residents, and also it sends a powerful message that Fukushima is safe to live and safe to visit. People here might think that Fukushima is far away and nothing to do with you, but I would like to let you know that there are so many sites that have been contaminated in US and the world. There are more than 10,000 Superfund sites in the US. Recently, the local residents or citizen groups have become more proactive and be involved in decision-making process. A friend of mine is involved in the citizen group in Colorado related to mining-related Superfund sites. We believe that what we learned in Fukushima, the importance of monitoring and the power of citizen science, can be a model case for contaminated sites in the US and also the world. I hope that you will never encounter such environmental contamination in your future, but the stories from today could be very useful in your future as well.
Okay, so good evening. My name is Ryugo Hayano, Tokyo University physics professor. Tonight I'm here with 3 high school students from Fukushima, Shunya, and Honoka and Ryo. And together, we present how a new generation rises to the challenge posed by the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident, which happened 6.5 years ago. Well, I am a physicist, and that means that I do not usually wear a tie. Well, and that is my tie. That's the CERN laboratory in Geneva. That's official tie. That depicts the equation for theory of almost everything. Okay. So I teach physics in Tokyo and then commute, so to speak, to Geneva every other week or so. I've been doing this for the past 20 years. I have been a leader of the antimatter research group, international team, since 1997. As such, I'm not an expert in nuclear engineering, like Haruko. I'm not an expert in nuclear, or radiation protection, nor risk communication. But, this bluebird here, that's the reason why I'm standing here. After the accident, I started, initially just out of my curiosity, I started to look at the data disseminated by TEPCO and the government, and then I shared my findings using my Twitter account, very often graphically. Okay, I posted the graphs and maps and so on. And to my surprise, within a few days after I have started doing this, this happened. That's a number of my Twitter followers that soared from some 2,500 to more than 150,000 within a few days. I still keep about 140,000 followers. Researchers at Tohoku University later analyzed the social media traffic in 2011, March, and I was identified as the 7th most influential Japanese-speaking Twitter account in March 2011. And in 2014, US Science magazine listed the top 100 scientists on Twitter across all the science disciplines and languages. My tweets are mostly in Japanese, and I was found to be number 22nd worldwide. Okay, for the past 6.5 years, in collaboration with medical doctors in Fukushima and high school students in Fukushima, I have together measured and the internal and external radiation exposures in Fukushima, and published the papers, scientific papers, and also talked to the media. And I also published a book. This is originally was in Japanese, and the English translated version is now available from US Kindle stores as well. Since Haruko has already explained about the earthquake and the nuclear power plant accident, I'll be brief about this subject. On March 11th, 2011, there was a big earthquake, magnitude 9, off the coast of the east part of Japan. And later on, a tsunami hit the northeast part of Japan very heavily. The number of deaths due to tsunami and earthquake was in fact larger in other prefectures. Miyagi was larger than in Fukushima, and Iwate was also larger than Fukushima. But so-called indirect death, that's the death due to evacuation or the death in the sheltering or the temporary houses, that was, in fact, larger than the direct death in Fukushima. Do you know how many people have so far died because of the radiation? Anybody?
0.
Yes, 0. Yes. So nobody has so far died, and all the world experts predict there will not be any increase, discernible increase in the radiation related deaths in the future. So let me now introduce the three high school students from Fukushima, Mr. Shunya Okino, okay, and Ms. Honoka Ara, and Mr. Ryo Endo. They're all senior or 11th grade students who are, in March 2011, just about to finish the 4th grade. You know, the Japanese school year starts in April, so that they were just about finishing the 4th grade in 2011. So Shunya and Honoka are from Fukushima High School, which is at this place, about 40 or so miles away from Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Ryo, on the other hand, is from Fukushima Futaba Mirai School, which is quite a new school. It was established just 2 years ago in 2015. And the location is just 18 miles from Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Before we further go on, let me just introduce the two important keywords. One is the external, the other is the internal radiation exposures. As a result of the accident, radioactivity, mainly radioactive cesium, were deposited on the Fukushima soil, which contaminated the soil. And they decay by emitting gamma rays, and when those gamma rays hit your body from outside, you receive the external dose. And when radioactive cesium is taken up by plants, and thereby contaminating fruits, crops, and the vegetables, and if you eat those contaminated food, then you receive internal radiation exposures. Now let me invite Shunya to come here, and together we discuss about the external exposure situation in Fukushima. So this picture says it was taken about a month later, the accident. So Shunya, where was this picture taken?
This picture was taken in Minamisoma City, which is my hometown.
That's just north of Fukushima Daiichi, about 20 miles north.
Which is my mother's hometown. There is a park with a big slider near here, and I used to visit and play with my friend there.
Yeah. And then again, this picture was taken in April 2011. And look at these beautiful pictures, these beautiful flowers that's in Fukushima City. That's a Hanamiyama Flower Park, is that right?
Yes.
And you don't seem to be so scared about the radiation. So were you okay then?
Yeah. My mother said I was a little afraid about radiation, but the level of radiation was decreasing at that time. And she was convinced that the level of radiation would not increase more. And moreover, when we went there, we went a mask.
Oh, but you're not. You're without the mask.
To take pictures. Yeah.
So this is your family, right? Your father, I understand, works for the local government, and you told me that your mother has a lot of knowledge about radiation. Why?
Because she worked at institution of Fukushima Prefecture and investigate about radiation containing food.
Okay. So, and in the summer of 2011, I believe it is your father. Yes. What is he doing here?
He cut grass and removed the contaminated soil of our garden. Yes.
So, but this was long before the local government started to decontaminate the houses in Fukushima City. So, but your family did it anyway yourself, right?
Yes. My parents wondered whether the local government started to decontaminate our house, so they decided to decontaminate it by themselves.
Okay, so I assume this is your father's hand.
Yeah, that's right.
Holding a dosimeter.
Yes.
And what's the reading? The reading, it says 2.7 microsievert per hour. Does it make any sense to you? Well, this number is higher than the natural background. But in 2011, the government declared that for the children to use the school playground, that this number has to be below 3.8 microsievert per hour. So this was already below 3.8. But was this before decontamination or after?
This is before the contamination.
And did it decrease after?
Sorry, we lost the data.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
sorry.
All right, anyway, so let's now talk about the D Shuttle. So this is the D Shuttle, this silicon-based dosimeter. And could you explain what this is good for?
Okay, this is a device. This device lets us know the amount of radiation per hour. This is an important characteristics. Thanks to this device, we can identify why the person exposed to radiation, and we analyze those data and determine the time which the person exposed to the radiation and infer the reasons.
Okay, so in collaboration with the high school students, we distributed this to many high schools in Japan and also in other countries. So these are two maps. The left is Japan, the right is Fukushima. Shunya, can you explain what this is?
Left one shows the natural background level of radiation of Japan, and the right one shows the level of radiation after the accident in Fukushima.
Okay. Well, this area that's enclosed by this white contour, that shows the evacuation zone as of 2011. So there are no high schools open during the time when we did this measurement. Ryo's high school, that's the Futabamira High School, is just outside this 20-kilometer zone. It's well, anyway. So we sent the dosimeters to 6 high schools outside of Fukushima Prefecture, and then 6 high schools within the Fukushima Prefecture. And then?
We also sent a D Shuttle to Europe, to France, Poland, and Belarus.
Yeah, this high school in particular is quite close to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Okay, so in the end, we managed to write a paper.
Yes. The D Shuttle data was analyzed at Fukushima High School by high school students.
Yeah. And in 2015, our collaborators from France, these French students are the collaborators, and they came to Fukushima High School, and I took this picture at the end of the so-called, so to speak, the collaboration meeting. Okay, so this is the paper.
Yes.
What are the first 2 pages?
Yes. There are 233 names here, and which 216 high school students who collaborated in this study.
So they are listed in alphabetical order. Okay. And then the main outcome of this study is this, right? Could you explain what this is?
So this is what we found. As you can see, the level, the external dosage.
So what's this axis here?
This is the level of radiation, the amount of radiation.
This is the millisievert per year. That's expected external radiation per year. The actual measurement was done for 2 weeks, but we just multiplied by a factor 365 divided by 14 to the number that we read out from the dosimeter, and that's what we are plotting. Okay, and
the external doses of high school students living in Fukushima, including natural background,
okay,
was not much difference from those in other parts in Japan and in Europe.
Okay.
And
In fact, what's this? This
Yes.
is the highest point.
Yes, in fact, the highest median doses, higher than in Fukushima, was recorded in Bastille, Corsica Island.
Do you know where? Yeah, that's on Corsica Island, France. Yeah. You know the reason?
Yes. Due to the radiation from granite rocks.
That's natural background from granite rocks. Okay. So thank you very much, Shunya.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So let me now introduce Honoka, and we talk about now the internal radiation exposures and also about the Fukushima food safety. Okay, let's begin with your picture taken in 2011. That's about a month after the accident. What's this event?
This is my friend's birthday party.
And I heard that they evacuated from Fukushima after this party.
Yes.
Did you meet each other again?
Of course. They came back 2 or 3 years after they have evacuated.
How about you yourself? Did you also evacuate?
Yes, I hadn't known whether I could stay in my house in Fukushima because some of my friends evacuated at that time. So we talked about evacuation with my family. Finally, we decided to evacuate to my grandparents' house to relax my mother because she felt stressed.
For how long? For about a month or so?
Yes, kind of that.
Yeah. Okay. Then what about this one? So this is your family, mother, father, and your brother, right?
Yes.
So what was your perception or your family's perception about radiation or Fukushima food safety?
My parents concerned the radiation risk to my body, but this is just a family trip to Kyoto.
Oh, this was Kyoto. So you
not
didn't evacuate to Kyoto, but it's just a happy family travel.
Yes.
Okay. And I like this picture. So what were you doing?
This is a picture of playing ballet. I was supposed to join the competition in the hall of Fukushima, but it was cancelled because of the earthquake.
Okay, so the next one is this was taken in 2013. That means that the Honoka was just about to graduate from the elementary school or 6th grade. So what was this event?
This is a picture of eating school lunch, which specially made in the kitchen of my elementary school.
Yeah?
And
what's so special about this lunch?
Yes, at that time, most parents in my school worried about food from Fukushima, so my elementary school decided not to use Fukushima's food to protect our health.
Yeah, well, in retrospect, it was not necessary. We know from by measurements that the Fukushima food was not contaminated at all from the very beginning. But there are many people who are living in Fukushima who are very much worried about the food safety. So there were not just your school, but other schools also did the similar things. And then after a month later, you entered the junior high, and that's the cherry blossom again. Okay. So to know whether you are internally contaminated or not, we first have to measure food. But if the food is really contaminated, then radioactive cesium starts to accumulate in the body. And in the body, the radioactive nuclei decay by emitting beta rays and gamma rays. And the gamma rays can penetrate your body and can come out. Therefore, you can measure the amount of radioactive cesium in the body by looking at these gamma rays using a device like this. What is this device called?
This is a whole body counter.
This is called the whole body counter. There wasn't any such device after the accident in Fukushima, but there are more than 50 such devices in Fukushima. Okay, I believe you have been in this device several times, and both of you have been in this device several times. How many times did you?
About 3 times.
About 3 times. So is this your first time? Is this from your first time? Okay.
Yes.
So this is in Japanese, but Honoka will explain to you what this 10 means.
I was 10 years old at the time of the accident.
And then 11?
Yes. I took the whole body counter screening test in May 2012.
12. Yeah.
When I was 11 years old.
And here you see cesium 134 and cesium 137. And then in Japanese it says, what does it mean?
Both of these were not detected.
So what was your reaction when you saw this?
After watching my results, I was relieved because I could know that there is no bad defect to my body.
Okay. So during that time, I mean, in 2012, I collaborated with many doctors in Fukushima and the medical institutions and measured some 30,000 people for internal contamination. And that was compared to the past data. Let me show you the past data first. So this graph shows the cesium-137 in Japanese adult male from 1955 to 1995. And you see there is a peak in 1964 when a typical Japanese adult male has nearly 600 becquerels of radioactive cesium in the body. Our measurement showed that the whole body counter, which has a detection limit of 300 becquerel, which is this line, okay, and 99% of the people whom we measured, or 100% of children we measured, were below this line already back in 2012. So 1964 was even higher than it was in Fukushima in 2012. Do you know why it was so high in 1964? Anybody?
United States nuclear testing.
Ah, yes. Not just you guys, but the Soviet Union and China and India and the UK and France. Yes, but in those days, that was atmospheric test. DPRK, the North Korea's test recently, that's underground. But in those days, it was atmospheric test that contributed to this very high level. So as you can see, the Fukushima in 2012 was below that level. Well, so even though the results are so negative, I mean, the people are not contaminated, parents are not so much convinced because they are still being very much worried about the possible internal radiation risks. And since the whole body counter that we showed you have to stand for 2 minutes, but babies, small children cannot stand. So I made this device. This is called the baby scan. Let me show this to you. Okay, so it looks like a bathtub, and there's a bed inside, and mother comes in with her children, and put the baby on the bed, and in 2 to 4 minutes, the scan is done. We have been measuring small children from 2014 using 3 such devices installed in Fukushima. We haven't found any small child who has detectable level of cesium in their bodies. Okay, so Honoka, could you explain this?
Okay, look at this graph. As you can see, that Japanese standard value of radiation dose is the most strict in the world.
This is food restriction, right? The units is becquerel per kilogram, okay?
And we can say that all Fukushima's food distributed in the market passes the most strict food inspection in the world.
As compared to the US standard, which is 1200, okay? So, and in Japan, rice is the staple food and it is very important. So let's have a look at the rice screening.
In addition, all bags of brown rice are tested and confirmed to be within 100 becquerel per kilogram.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so there are more than 10 million rice bags harvested in Fukushima each year. And using such a device, not just this one, but there are many such devices in Fukushima. The first year, 2012, they found 71 out of 10 million, which exceeded 100 becquerel per kilogram. That number decreased to 28 in 2013, to just 2 in 2014, and from 2015 on, no, 0, 0. Okay, so rice is quite safe, and let's have a look at the other one. Okay, which is the fish.
this is a graph of results of radiation inspection on fish. Look at this green line. The percentage of fish which are more than 100 becquerel per kilogram is decreasing. Now it is 0%.
Yeah, from spring of 2015 on, there was no fish which was found which exceeded 100 becquerel per kilogram. So farmers and fishermen, despite these results, they are struggling to recover from the accident and regain the trust of consumers. And Honoka has been studying this problem by interviewing farmers and so on. And let's ask Honoka to explain, to introduce some farmers who are busy at work trying to regain the trust. So who is this?
He's Noboru Saito, who works in Fukushima, and he tries to do 2 new things. He had started online selling and maintains direct sales with 52 farmers. And also he holds study farm, in which people visit his farm and measure radiation dose, also experience agriculture experience.
Yeah. And who is this gentleman here?
And he is Shohei Kikuchi, who also works in Fukushima. He tries hard to distinguish his eggs from others by using organic farming. The eggs which he spends time and effort on cost a little, but they are really delicious.
Did you try his eggs?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, very nice.
So both of these farmers changes their way of selling products. Look at this picture in the bottom. This shows the way of selling products. Farmers in Fukushima had a problem because there is a trust issue in terms of food safety. Instead of old way, they built a new connection between farmers and consumers directly. In this way, connecting farmers and consumers directly build a trust relationship with each other.
So thank you very much, Honoka. And okay, let me now invite Ryo to join me. Okay, so Ryo's story is somewhat different from the other two because, well, this was the picture taken about 10 years ago. And where was this picture taken?
Yeah, in front of my friend's house.
Okay, so you may not be able to read this, but it says Kumamachi Shogakko, the Kumamachi Elementary School. And let's try to find out where it is. The Kumamachi Elementary School is here, okay? And let's zoom in. And that here is Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. So how far away is your school from the nuclear power plant?
It's about 4 kilometers.
And where did you live?
My home is
Around here?
yeah, further west than my elementary school and about 5 kilometers
So
from Fukushima Daiichi.
So there, a picture from of his house. beautiful house, a beautiful garden. And this was taken in 2010, a year before the accident. But the fact that they lived so close to the nuclear power plant means that they had to evacuate it immediately on the second day, right? Tell us about your evacuation experience.
I was 10 years old at that time. When the earthquake happened, I was in my elementary school, preparing to go back home. So now, if you went to my elementary school, you could see a calendar frozen in time on the wall and schoolworks full of textbooks on desks.
So his house, his home, and his elementary school they are in this area, which is in pink.
Yeah.
So explain about this.
Look at this pink area on the map. This area is called the difficult to return zone. My home is in this area.
Yeah, the green hatched zone, the evacuation order was lifted recently in this spring, but the pink zone, you cannot return yet. Okay, and then you were here, right, Okuma, and
yeah.
What are the other 3 circles?
Okuma town is my hometown, but I haven't lived there since the accident. So I lived at 2 places. One is Iwaki City, just under Okuma, and the other is Aizu Wakamatsu, famous for beautiful Japanese-style castle. When I evacuated from our hometown, I visited Tokyo first, then Aizu Wakamatsu, and I live in Iwaki City to go to my school there now.
Which is here. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're commuting from Iwaki to your school by train these days, right? Okay. So please tell us about this picture, which was taken in October 2015. Is that you here? That's,
Yes, it's me.
yeah.
You already know my hometown is in difficult to return zone. So people have to be over 15 years old to enter my hometown. When I turned 15 years old, I visited my house for the first time since the accident. I could finally see how the disaster had changed my hometown. There were trees growing thickly, and the evidence that animals had taken up residence in my home.
Yeah, it's a wild boar and rats and so on. And this is?
This is a picture of living room in my house. And this is around the kitchen.
Yeah, so still left untouched. So last year, I had a chance to take high school students, Fukushima high school students, including Shunya, to visit the Fukushima Daiichi site. This was the first this is the first time when minors were accepted to go into the site. And recently, Ryo independently had a chance to go to the site and had a look at the progress of the efforts being done at the site. So tell us about what you had and what your future perspectives are.
Okay. In the future, I want to participate in the decommissioning of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant because I believe that it is the best way to restore my hometown. To achieve this, I will learn nuclear engineering at university and how to dispose radioactive waste safely. We are the next generation in Fukushima.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Would you like to come to Berkeley Nuclear Engineering, maybe? Okay, thank you. So to wrap up, I'd like to invite one each. I mean, so once again, starting from Shunya, to come here and then ask them to present your final concluding remarks. Okay, so okay. Shunya, please.
After the accident, my family responded calmly and with a focus on intelligence and composure. I believe that the correct knowledge of radiation has enabled us to do so. For instance, my mother taught me a lot about radiation since the accident. And when I was 11, as a birthday present, my parents bought me a thick book on science to learn about radiation. I know that bad rumors and fake news of Fukushima has spread around the world on social media. And I know that many foreigners decided not to go to Fukushima or even Japan as a whole. It has made many people of Fukushima really sad. My family's experience shows that correct scientific knowledge helps. You don't have to become the expert of radiation. All you have to know is the amount of radiation that does not affect your health. Since the accident happened, I have been thinking a lot about energy and environmental issues. I'm particularly interested in geology and earth science. So today, I'm very excited to be in California, which is a world leader in geothermal. And I will study hard to be an energy expert. And I'm very interested in renewable energies, such as geothermal. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thank you. And next is Honoka. Please come here.
I have been learning a lot about Fukushima's food. As I mentioned in the presentation, the food from Fukushima has actually been declared safe, and our fishermen and farmers are hard at work making delicious food, especially delicious fruits, such as peaches and apples. Despite their efforts, the negative stigma and rumors still continue to haunt Fukushima, while the actual situation in Fukushima remains unknown around the world. I believe that speaking at this event is a great opportunity to reach out to people in the United States and start correcting this false perception of my hometown. When people hear the name Fukushima, I want the name to inspire the images and stories. Just beyond the nuclear accident, there is so much more to Fukushima: its beauty, culture, people, and history. I'm so excited that 2020, the Olympic baseball and softball games will be held in Fukushima. This will be a wonderful opportunity for people to learn more about this great place, my hometown. I hope that many people will come to Fukushima and see the amazing changes for themselves. Finally, as a high school student, I will continue to sharing Fukushima's beauty, not only with Japan, but also around the world. Thank you for listening.
Great speech. Thank you very much. And then finally, Ryo.
As you are aware, we 3 students all from Fukushima, but each of us has different experiences during and after the accident, and different perspective of our future. There is no collective entity that is people in Fukushima. There are so many different lives and experiences depending on the locations and other factors. I am one of the evacuees, but I really enjoy my life now. We often see TV programs focused only on some communities having trouble restoring their lives. We appreciate the sympathy, but the portrayal that evacuees are pitiful actually hurts my feelings, because I had met many great people in new locations and I have many good memories. This event is a great opportunity for me to speak about the real situation in Fukushima and our lives. I will continue to speak up in the future. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. So let me just wrap up. There's some take-home messages. One is that there has been no death due to radiation, and there will not be any in the future. Internal exposure risk is negligibly low. It is completely safe to go and eat Fukushima, enjoy Fukushima food. And external exposure is at the level of natural background in other cities in the world. And experts, although we do not have time to talk about this, but experts agree that the thyroid cancers, which newspapers report that there have been some 150 thyroid cancer patients in Fukushima, but they are not due to the accident. They are just due to the fact that so many children have been screened using the ultrasonic probes. Well, evacuated people do have difficulties, and there are still difficulties remaining in the farming, fishing, and so on. But people are trying to rebuild their lives, as you have heard from Ryo. So come visit us in Japan and come visit them in Fukushima. So how about giving big hands to students?
Hi, thank you so much for having us here today. We're honored to be here. Guadalupe and I are both freelance journalists, and we went to Fukushima with the Delena Takayama as our sponsors. So we'd like to thank Delena Takayama Institute as well.
Hello, good evening. My name is Guadalupe Gonzalez. I would like to start off by saying thank you all for being here, and thank you for having us. It is a pleasure to be here. It's been 3 years since we went to Fukushima, and to be honest, although I still carry those people in my mind and heart, a lot of those details from that trip were sort of a blur, considering it was 3 years ago. So preparing for this event really brought back great memories, and it's an honor to share these stories with you all. There was let me just tell you how we got into the program. There was 6 San Francisco State University students who participated in this program. 5 of us were journalism students and 1 Japanese language student. 2 of our professors, journalism professors, also went. And we were accompanied by a reporter from KALW radio as well. So we're just going to go ahead and start with a video that we produced just to show what type of environment we were in while on our trip.
Before we do that, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. We had 6 months of cultural training before we went, and when we did get there, we spent about less than a month, but in that time we did a lot of things and we saw a lot. Before we went, in those 6 months, we were prepared by an AP journalist from Japan who had spent years documenting the incident and then the aftermath. We also were counseled by a psychologist who was Japanese and had extensive knowledge in trauma and really informed us on the threat of re-traumatizing people by asking them to recount this event. So what we stuck to was a restorative narrative, which means it's a type of journalism that's fairly new, and it was a great way to experiment it out there because it is a sensitive way of going about communities that have seen a lot of trauma. So it asks questions that at the end comes to solutions, and it's a solutions-based journalism. So we ended up asking everyone we met 3 questions: the past, present, and future. What happened, where are you now, and what do you hope for in the future? And that last question is really where we found a lot of solutions. So this piece here is a piece by Gloria I'm sorry.
Larissa Salvatin.
Thank you. And it's a piece about the Fukushima Ambassador Program. The students from Fukushima University were our interpreters, but they were also our friends. So we'll show you that.
これからグループに分かれまして、日本人副大生には先生になってもらいます。何を教えるかというと、学生たちに自分たちの自己紹介フレーズを一緒に作ってもらいます。すでに日本語できる方はいらっしゃる場合は、かなり高度な難しい内容の日本語の紹介をお願いしたいんですけども、名前とか好きな食べ物とか出身地とかそういうことを入れていただけたらと思います。
皆さんはじめまして。
新潟大学で留学しています。
卒業したら日本で英語を教えたいと思っています。
私はサンフランシスコ大学にいてます。
今回日本に来てとても嬉しいです。
日本へ来た理由は日本からハワイへ移民について研究することです。
そして日本語をしました。
私は船に住んでいます。
私は33歳です。はい。
よろしくお願いします。
So as you can tell, we became pretty close friends with some of the people that we met in Fukushima, and we took a lot of responsibility in telling their stories. Kazuya Sato is a student at Fukushima University who I met and became very close friends with over the course of the trip. And we didn't actually sit down and I didn't actually interview him until the last part of our trip. On our short reporting trip, we saw a lot. On one hand, we visited Namie, which is where this photo is taken here. This was about 3 miles out of shore, and this is pretty typical. On the way to Namie, you see a lot of cars and boats and things that you really wouldn't expect to see out inland. So that was surprising for us. And on the other hand, we saw a lot of things that are typically normal of a city. That's pastoral, like Fukushima, or I'm sorry, prefecture like Fukushima. We cleaned up driveways of homes that had been abandoned for 3 years. We ate fish and fruit, and we ate everything when we were there, and everything was delicious. And although we were hesitant before we went to take part in those cultural activities, we were pretty calmed down by all the scientists that we met and all of the research that we had put into our experience there. I chose to focus on 2 things, people's mental health and community development. In my own experience, after a natural disaster in my own life, these were directly related for me. Kazuya Sato and I both really, our friendship was built on a very similar experience. We both experienced trauma after these earthquakes, thank you. And for Sato, that meant not being able to go on trains. But he still did it because he had to. So he took anxiety medication. Unlike me, I'm not really on medication. I've been able to pretty much take care of myself, but that isn't available for everyone. Not everyone can do that for themselves. So Kazuya, for me, at the end of that trip was a very special story, and I hope you all have a chance to read it on our website. It's fukushima.sfsu.edu. I went back to school with kind of a renewed vigor, and I started studying urban planning. Kazuya also did the same. When he went back to school, he ended up going for his master's in geology. And like a lot of students in Fukushima, they changed from their liberal arts majors to a science major. So many students changed their majors, in fact, that they started building up their science programs. In terms of community recovery, I wrote a piece called shared paper walls after an iron wave. And I entitled it that because the residents at the Sasaya East temporary facility, they all had a very similar story, and that was that they didn't have a lot of room to grow. They had 7x7 temporary housing, and that meant that they could hear what was happening in the next homes. People couldn't be intimate with their wives and their husbands. They had to leave the temporary housing to have fights, to have intimate moments, to scold their children. So that led to a lot of depression, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of mental health issues after the recovery. And these are things we don't really think about when we're building our disaster preparedness programs. We're not really thinking about the mental health of people. We're not thinking about moving whole communities out of those places. So at the end of this story, that's really what I came away with, was solutions in terms of community development and how to keep them. It's really good to hear that fishermen and farmers are back to work, because a lot of the issues after the incident was that people didn't have jobs to go home to. So farmers and fishermen who were constantly going outside and getting exercise were now just staying home, and they didn't really have much to do. They were staying in their little concrete facilities and didn't really leave that temporary housing. Nobu Kano, right here, said to me that it was like being a pig who was just being fed and never taken out for exercise. He actually lifted up his shirt while I was interviewing him to show me the scar he had over his heart. He's 42, but he just had heart surgery, which is a common story. A lot of these people are over 40 years old, and they don't want to restart their lives. He lost his salon and his home, so he had to start from scratch, and he just told me he didn't have the energy, and that's what I heard a lot in the Sasaya East temporary housing. Itate is the next story that I did was what happens after a model pastoral city is hit with catastrophe. Itate was a model pastoral town, meaning agriculture, pastoral scenery, and humans all kind of coexisted together in this beautiful way. They call it Made life, which means a pastoral village, or Made translates to respectfully and carefully. After the incident, 50% of Itate's population was displaced. I focused on the task force of community scientists and planners who came together to really try to rebuild this village. The devastation of losing one's household is enough, but to lose your way of life and to lose your community that you've been with for generations is incredibly difficult. So some of the solutions that I came out with were that in order to really develop a disaster preparedness program, you've got to think of it holistically. That includes community redevelopment, mental health, jobs, and also almost giving people who are evacuees a sense of home. So what ended up happening at these temporary housing facilities was something called a watering phenomenon, where people started to just grow things wherever they could. Farmers, fishermen, people who just worked with their hands all of their lives got so desperate that they started to just grow wherever they could, on cement, on the walls, anywhere that they could. So if you were to go to these very cement temporary housing facilities, you'll just see plants growing anywhere that they can. So to just sum up my experience, I think that restorative journalism was a very helpful tool in dealing with people with trauma. It gave the mic to people. We were able to let them just write their own stories instead of doing it for them. And that was one more way for us to tell Fukushima that we are here and that we remember them. And so on that note, thank you very much. I'll give it to Guadalupe.
So a lot that we observed there was anxiety and uncertainty for the future. Not many people were worried about radiation, but they were more about the uncertainty of their future, which caused them to have extreme anxiety. We visited, like Natalie said, a few temporary housing facilities and spoke to the residents. And we saw how the routines, their daily routines were interrupted, just going for walks, gardening. And that caused them stress. We also saw that this anxiety was caused by the uncertainty. So I'll go ahead and draw attention to our website and focus on some of the stories, particularly this one, the principal and his school. We met with Principal Takahara Toshiko, who gave us a tour of Tomoyo High School. Tomoyo High School was, when we visited this site, it was very special to us because the day of the earthquake, they had a graduation that same day prior to the earthquake. So a lot of the furniture was still in place when we went there. Or it was very dramatic and very surreal to be there. We toured the damaged school, which was now a storage center for personal belongings that were unclaimed. So there was a lot of photo albums, notebooks. It was very, very emotional just being there and seeing people's personal belongings there. You could read a lot more about the story on our website. But what was also, what this showed was the uncertainty of the region. People didn't know what to do with the school. It was abandoned. They didn't know if they wanted to demolish it because it brought bad memories or keep it up as a memorial for the people who have lost their lives or were affected by the disaster. Recently, I followed up with a couple of friends, and it turns out the school was actually demolished. I'll go ahead and present the cafe clerk as well. This is a cafe. It is called Kanchan no Chikara. I hope I said that right, sorry. There I met Takahashi Fujiko. She was, when the disaster happened, she was working in a small office in Takahira. After the earthquake, she moved around a lot. After the tsunami, she went to about 5 different cities before being relocated in Fukushima City. And when I met her, she was very stern, very pensive, working, but with a very serious face on her look. And when I talked to her, the story I wrote, this one, it was actually an oral history, so everything you read is as of her words. These are specifically her words. And she said, you can't sleep at night. Once it starts getting dark, you start thinking, this is no good. And I would think, God, what's going to happen to Japan? And this is a thought she would have every single night. So the story shows a lot of anxiety, yet I saw that spaces like this cafe was very beneficial to a lot of residents. The cafe allowed her to space to speak with other people who were dislocated, share their stories, concerns, and also provided work. So the food grown at this cafe, the food that was used at this cafe was grown by people who were dislocated. And the people who worked at the cafe were people who were dislocated as well. So it gave them something to do. It occupied them. It gave them an income instead of sitting in a temporary housing facility waiting for the next step, which was uncertain 3 years ago. They had no idea when they were going to return back to their homelands. Unfortunately, I followed up with friends as well, and the cafe has closed because the subsidies ended, but they still provide services, bento boxes, through delivery. What we also witnessed there was the local efforts to rebuild the region. I would like to focus on this next story on the doctor. The doctor, her name is Dr. Sei Ochi. She is a practicing rheumatologist. She was studying epidemiology at Imperial College in London when the earthquake happened, so she sort of had an external perspective of how things were going about in Japan. And that really got her involved in the, I would say, the redevelopment of the region and trying to provide accurate information. She was working, when we met her at Fukushima, she was working at Soma Central Hospital. And what I got from her presentation, basically what she said is people who did not flee their homes in some way fared better than those in temporary housing. And that statement is based on a strength study that they conducted at Soma Central Hospital. So they were measuring the strength of people who were dislocated and people who did not leave, and they realized that people who were in temporary housing had grown weaker because they lack these daily activities. She also said that the risk of radiation is still far lower than risk of obesity, risk of lack of exercise, and excessive salt. So she was thinking about the holistic care of the people and how they were, not necessarily of radiation, because like I said, not many people were worried about the radiation. It was the after effects of what were they doing in temporary housing and their futures. Another story I'd like to focus is Somo's rock star. He was actually our host family. He hosted me and another colleague of mine in his home. And I found that very peculiar that he would open his home up to strangers, complete strangers. And he's originally from Tokyo, and he moved to Soma because he prefers the countryside. They call him the rock star. His wife calls him the rock star, teases him because he's a singer, actually, and he produces albums. He actually gave me one of these albums, and a lot of these albums are, I guess, it's music based on his experience and memories of his friends from his hometown. Not from his hometown, from Soma. He also took us to Onodai temporary housing to volunteer to meet other people, and just opened his home to show us that Fukushima is safe and what it has to offer. Our experience there, it just showed the personal effort to the recuperation of the region, and in turn, it shows the people's love of Fukushima and their commitment for it to succeed. Thank you for your time.
So I know we already ran out of time, and I also know that nobody wants to listen to a long speech by a government official. So I'll make it very quick. So first of all, on behalf of the Japanese people, let me thank all of you, to the citizens of the U.S. and the rest of the world, to thank you. Thank you for your support just after the earthquake and the following nuclear disaster. This is just one example of the support we were given from the world and especially the United States. Operation Tomodachi by the U.S. military. And let me very briefly talk about what we do in Fukushima to clean up the environment in Fukushima. So we have conducted decontamination all around Fukushima. So it takes more than 5 years or so. But we're almost complete finishing the decontamination of the areas all around Fukushima. So what we have done is to basically remove the contaminated soil in houses, and the farmlands, and the roads. And now we have generated removed soil. The removed soil is stocked all around Fukushima. So it is called temporary storage sites. And these removed soil will be transported into to the interim storage facility, which is located nuclear power plant. And final disposal is planned to follow. So due to the efforts of decontamination, as well as the natural decay of radioactive cesium, so it naturally decreases. As the students already explained to you, so the air dose rate in Fukushima is about the same level as other major cities in the world. So we are exposed to natural radiation every day. So the level, you see the numbers here and numbers in Fukushima. So it is a fact. There is some place where returning is difficult due to the high radioactivity. But the area is quite limited, only less than 3% of the Fukushima Prefecture. So in most of the areas in Fukushima and as a result, the evacuation orders have been lifted in most of the areas. So our last message is this. Fukushima welcomes you. So Fukushima is famous for its fruit and sake. Sake is waiting for you. And also baseball. So as she explained to you, Fukushima Prefecture will host baseball games for Tokyo 2020. And the Ministry of the Environment also collaborated with Discovery Channel. In this program named Fukushima Diaries, Michael Schellenberger, maybe some of you may know, he's an environmentalist living in San Francisco, as well as 2 bloggers, visit many places in Fukushima and interact with local people to discover what Fukushima really is now. So unfortunately, it will be broadcast only in Asia and Pacific region, but the good news is it will be available in our website somewhere around December 10th or so. So do not miss it. And if you watch it, or even if you don't watch it, come to Fukushima. Thank you.